They say money can't buy happiness, but in the Hamptons, it buys an incredible illusion of it. Look at this house. It's a $60 million fortress of glass and steel, overlooking an ocean that feels as cold and empty as my marriage. 4 or 5 years, I lived here as the perfect billionaire's wife, hosting charity galas, smiling for the local magazines, and playing the part of the quiet, supportive woman behind a tech genius. But illusions are fragile things. All it takes is one hairline crack for the entire glass house to shatter into sharp, bloody pieces. My name is Evelyn. To the world, my husband Julian was the golden boy of Silicon Valley, a self-made billionaire who revolutionized artificial intelligence. The media loved his charming smile and his sharp, tailored suits. They call him a visionary. But the media didn't see him when the cameras turned off. They didn't see the cold, calculated look in his eyes, or the way his smile vanished the moment he stepped across our threshold. To the world, he was a god. To me, he was becoming a stranger. What everyone forgets is that before Julian was a billionaire, he was just a broke college kid living on instant noodles in a cramped, moldy dorm room. They forget that I was there, sitting right next to him on that squeaky mattress, coding until 4 in the morning. Julian had the charisma. He had the pitch, but I had the brain. I wrote the foundational algorithm for his entire AI empire. I gave him the keys to the kingdom, and like a fool, I let him put only his name on the patent because I believed we were a team. But wealth does something terrifying to a man's psychology. It acts like an amplifier, turning small flaws into massive, destructive monsters. As the company grew, Julian began to look at me not as his partner, but as an old relic from his poor past, a living reminder of a time when he wasn't powerful. He started suggesting I stay home more. He told me the corporate world was too stressful for me. Slowly, systematically, he pushed me out of the very company I built, trapping me in this golden cage. The first red flag wasn't a lipstick stain or a secret phone call. It was a change in his digital behavior. Julian is a tech genius, but he forgot that I am better. It started when he changed the security protocols on his personal home server, a server I designed. Then came the locked phone, kept face down on the nightstand, its screen flashing with encrypted notifications in the dead of night. And finally, there was that scent. A heavy, suffocating scent of expensive French jasmine perfume clinging to his jacket. A perfume I have never owned. When a woman smells another woman on her husband, her first instinct is usually to scream, to cry, to throw a vase across the room. But I've spent too much time reading the dark corners of Reddit's r/surviving infidelity and r/legal advice to make a rookie mistake like that. If you confront a narcissist with weak evidence, they will gaslight you until you doubt your own sanity. They will hide the money, wipe the servers, and leave you with nothing. No, I wasn't going to scream. I was going to get organized. I knew I couldn't investigate him using our shared network, so I bought a burner phone and hired Marcus. Marcus is a private investigator who operates in the shadows of New York's elite. He doesn't handle petty divorces. He handles high-stakes corporate espionage and wealthy betrayals. I met him in a dimly lit diner in Queens, far away from the prying eyes of Manhattan. I handed him an envelope of cash and told him, find out who she is and find out what they are discussing when the doors are closed. Exactly 48 hours later, a secure, encrypted link appeared on my burner phone. It led to a hidden cloud drive. My fingers trembled slightly as I tapped the screen, opening a file labeled with Julian's initials. Inside were dozens of high-definition photographs, bank statements, and audio transcripts. My breath caught in my throat, and for a second, the room spun. The betrayal wasn't just physical. It was a calculated assassination of my entire life. The woman in the photographs was Chloe, my best friend, the maid of honor at my wedding, the woman who sat at my Thanksgiving table and told me how lucky I was to have a man like Julian. There they were, captured by Marcus's long-range lens on a private balcony of a luxury boutique hotel in Soho. They weren't just sleeping together. They were laughing at me. They looked like two predators who had successfully cornered their prey. But as I scrolled further down into the audio transcripts, the true horror of their plan unraveled. They weren't just waiting for a divorce. Julian and Chloe were actively setting me up. Because of our prenuptial agreement, if I divorced him for cheating, I would get half of his shares. To prevent this, Julian was using his access to my old digital signatures to dump millions of dollars of dirty corporate money into a fake offshore account in my name. They were going to frame me for corporate embezzlement and send me to federal prison. The sheer cruelty of it was breathtaking. My husband and my best friend were plotting to lock me away in a cage for 15 years just so they could inherit my algorithm without paying a single dime. I sat on the floor of my luxury bathroom for an hour, listening to the hum of the ventilation fan. But then, the sadness evaporated, replaced by a cold, crystalline rage. They thought I was just a naive housewife who spent her days buying flowers. They forgot that before I was his wife, I was his architect. When Julian came home that night, he smelled like rain and that damn jasmine perfume. He walked up behind me in the kitchen, wrapping his arms around my waist and kissing my neck. A shudder of pure disgust ran down my spine, but I forced my muscles to relax. I turned around in his arms, smiled softly, and asked him how his day was. "Exhausting, honey," he said, looking tiredly into my eyes. "The board is putting pressure on the upcoming IPO. I don't know what I'd do without your peace and quiet here." The lie came out of his mouth so smoothly it was almost artistic. The very next morning, the moment Julian's limousine cleared the security gates, I went to work. I entered his private home office, a room that was strictly off-limits to everyone. He had a biometric lock on his computer, but he was arrogant. He used a custom encryption algorithm that he boasted was unhackable. What he forgot was that the core architecture of that encryption was based on a code I wrote back in our college dorm. It took me less than 12 minutes to bypass his security firewalls and gain total access to his master server. As I dug deeper into his hidden files, I found the digital trail. He had already created the shell companies in the Cayman Islands under the name E. Vance, my maiden name. He had forged my digital signature on 3 separate wire transfers, totaling $14 million. The trap was fully set. He was planning to trigger an anonymous tip to the Securities and Exchange Commission right after the company's massive IPO launch on Friday. They wanted a villain? Fine. I was going to give them a masterpiece. I called Marcus on the burner phone. "Marcus, we're changing the script." I told him, my voice steady. "I don't want to stop the wire transfers. In fact, I want you to help me facilitate them. We're going to let Julian and Chloe think their plan is working flawlessly. Let them move the money. Let them build their fake case against me. But we are going to add a hidden redirect clause into the final smart contract transfer." Marcus chuckled on the other end. "Evelyn," he said, "you are a dangerous woman." Next, I opened a file I hadn't touched in 5 years. Our original prenuptial agreement. When Julian and I got married, his father's lawyer had insisted on a strict intellectual property clause. It stated that any software created prior to the marriage belonged solely to the creator unless officially transferred to the corporate entity. Julian thought he had transferred it, but when I checked the corporate registry, I found a loophole. The transfer document he signed had a typo in the software's serial code. A typo I had intentionally left there 5 years ago, just in case. Legally, the core AI algorithm that powered his entire multi-billion-dollar company did not belong to Mekra Tech. It belonged to me, Evelyn Vance. Julian had built a skyscraper on a piece of land that I still owned entirely. With a few clicks, I initiated a legal reclamation of the patent, routing it through an independent trust based in Switzerland. I kept the filing completely private, sealing it under a standard corporate non-disclosure grace period that would expire exactly at 9 p.m. on Friday night, right in the middle of his grand IPO launch party. While I was orchestrating his downfall, my phone buzzed. It was Chloe. "Hey, babe," her text read, accompanied by 3 heart emojis. "I miss you so much. Let's do a luxury spa day at the Mandarin Oriental this Thursday. My treat. You look so stressed lately." I stared at the message, a dark smile spreading across my face. She wanted to keep me close, to monitor my psychological state, and ensure I wasn't suspecting anything before the big trap snapped shut. "I'd love to, Chloe," I texted back. "Can't wait." Thursday arrived. I sat across from Chloe at the rooftop lounge of the Mandarin Oriental, watching her sip her green juice. She looked beautiful, polished, and completely soulless. She spent an hour telling me how much she valued our friendship, all while her hand rested on an expensive Chanel bag that I knew Julian had bought her with our joint credit card. "You're such a good wife, Evelyn," she said, patting my hand. "Julian is so lucky to have you." It took every ounce of my willpower not to drive my salad fork directly into her perfect, veneered smile. "Thank you, Chloe," I said, my voice dripping with manufactured warmth. "Julian is a special man. He always says that people get exactly what they deserve in the end." Chloe's smile froze for a fraction of a second, a flicker of unease passing through her eyes before she laughed it off. Oh, she had no idea. She thought she was the clever fox sneaking into the henhouse. She didn't realize she was walking straight into a slaughterhouse. Friday night, the night of the Mekara Tech IPO Gala. The grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel was a sea of black ties, diamond necklaces, and flashing camera lights. Every major tech investor, Wall Street shark, and media reporter in New York City was in that room. The energy was electric. Julian's company was projected to be valued at $12 billion by midnight. He was standing in the center of the room, surrounded by a crowd of wealthy sycophants, holding a glass of scotch like he owned the world. Julian saw me walking through the entrance, and his eyes narrowed slightly before widening into his trademark public smile. I wasn't wearing the soft, pastel dresses he usually forced me to wear to look submissive. Tonight, I wore a stunning, razor-sharp, midnight black silk gown that fit like armor. I looked like a queen attending an execution. As I walked down the grand staircase, the whispers followed me. I could see Chloe standing near the bar, wearing a fiery red dress that practically screamed for attention. She gave me a subtle, smug nod. "Ladies and gentlemen," the announcer's voice boomed through the massive audio system. "Please welcome the founder and CEO of Mekara Tech, the man who redefined the future, Julian Vance." The ballroom erupted into thunderous applause. Julian smoothed his tuxedo jacket, flashed his million-dollar smile, and walked up the steps onto the grand stage. Behind him, a massive, custom-built LED screen stretched 40 feet wide, ready to display the live stock market ticker and the launch presentation. Julian cleared his throat and began his speech. He talked about vision, about integrity, and about how he built this empire from nothing through sheer hard work and dedication. He didn't mention me once. He didn't mention the thousands of hours I spent coding the algorithm. I stood near the back of the room, right next to four men in dark, identical tailored suits who had arrived late. They weren't tech investors. They were federal agents from the Southern District of New York, invited personally by me using Marcus's high-level connections. "And now," Julian shouted, his voice reaching a dramatic crescendo, "as the clock strikes 9, we officially open the public trading for Mekara Tech." He pointed a remote at the massive LED screen behind him, expecting to see the stock ticker shoot into stratosphere. But the moment he pressed the button, the entire screen glitched. The beautiful corporate graphics tore apart into violent green lines of digital static. A loud, harsh electronic screech echoed through the ballroom's high-end sound system, making people cover their ears. Julian froze, his smile faltering. Looks like we have a minor technical glitch, folks," he said into the microphone, trying to laugh it off. He signaled wildly to the tech crew in the back, but the crew had completely lost control of the system. The static on the screen suddenly cleared, replaced not by the stock ticker, but by a giant, clean waveform of an audio file. And then, a voice began to play through the speakers. A voice that was loud, clear, and terrifyingly familiar to everyone in the room. It was Julian's voice. "Once the IPO hits on Friday night, the SEC will get an anonymous tip about the Cayman accounts." The recorded voice boomed through the ballroom, echoing off the crystal chandeliers. "Evelyn's digital signatures are already on the wire transfers. By Monday morning, the feds will arrest her for embezzlement. She'll be tied up in legal hell for the next 10 years, leaving the company entirely in my hands." The silence that fell over the room was absolute. You could hear a pin drop. The ballroom froze as Julian's own recorded voice echoed through the speakers, exposing his plan to frame Evelyn for embezzlement using fake Cayman accounts and forged wire transfers. Guests stared in horror while Chloe dropped her champagne glass in panic. The screen switched from the audio waveform to official Swiss legal documents proving Evelyn had reclaimed ownership of the core AI patent. A massive warning flashed across the screen. As investors panicked and reporters rushed forward, federal agents stepped onto the stage. In front of the entire ballroom, Julian Vance was arrested for fraud, conspiracy, and attempted framing. Chloe tried escaping through the hotel exit, but security intercepted her. Her glamorous appearance completely unraveled as police dragged her away through crowds of reporters. As Julian was dragged past her in handcuffs, he hissed that she had destroyed him. Evelyn calmly raised a glass of champagne and whispered, "I only took back what was mine. Never forget who wrote the code." By morning, every newspaper and financial network covered the scandal. Mekara Tech collapsed, Julian's assets were seized, and his luxury empire was auctioned off piece by piece. Julian and Chloe faced decades in federal prison while Evelyn disappeared from New York forever. She moved to Paris, launched her own independent AI company, and finally lived free under her own name. They try to play chess with the woman who built the board. Now Julian and Chloe have 20 years to regret it.